By 1956, McDonald's was already facing a number of worthy competitors. Partially because of the McDonald brothers, they'd revolutionized the fast food 8 years ago, but they welcomed others into their kitchen, creating lots of competitors who copied their system. Fast food was no longer unique to McDonald's. Ray was trying to open new McDonald's locations across the country, but at the exact same time, so were similar franchises like In-N-Out Burger, Burger Chef, and Burger King. Even outside of burgers, Colonel Sanders was already expanding Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Carl's Jr. was doing the same with hot dogs. With so many fast food franchises fighting for dominance, McDonald's was far from being guaranteed success. So how did McDonald's manage to outcompete every single one of them? The answer? It turns out the genius of how Ray and Harry structured their franchising empire. At the time, the most common way to franchise a brick-and-mortar business was a territorial franchising, which means selling the exclusive right to operate in a given territory. By selling huge contracts for whole areas, franchisors would make a lot of money upfront before their first store ever opened. And it meant they weren't dependent on their restaurant actually succeeding to make a profit. This sounds good in theory, but in practice, it meant the interests of the franchisor and the franchisee weren't fully aligned. Instead of doing this, Ray decided to build McDonald's one store at a time. If an operator wanted to manage an additional store, they would need to prove that their first McDonald's was successful. This was slower, but it guaranteed superior quality of every store in the long run. Not just that, but traditional franchisors made most of their money by selling supplies for their franchisees. Things like kitchen equipment, cooking supplies, and even things like the restaurant sign. Franchisors made quick profits by overpricing their supplies, and so they became more focused on selling stuff to their franchisees than actually becoming a successful retailer. Ray decided against selling supplies to his franchisees because it turned them into his customers instead of his partners. Since Ray's company only made money for its 1.4% service fee based on how much revenue each store made, it was in his best interest to make his franchisees as rich as he possibly could. It was a simple yet bold strategy, and it meant that McDonald's System Incorporated's interests were fully aligned with the interest of its store operators. Both of them were trying to make McDonald's stores the best and most profitable they could be, as opposed to many other chains where the franchisors just make all their money selling to franchisees. Even in person, Ray treated McDonald's operators as equal partners in his mission. Both franchisors and franchisee benefited from the success of the system as a whole, and so everyone worked to make McDonald's success. It didn't hurt that Ray was also a very convincing salesman when it came to communicating his unshakable belief in McDonald's future. So many franchisees fully bought into his vision, but because Ray was essentially selling a system, he needed to find the right person to help perfect it. Luckily, Ray already knew the man for the job, a young guy named Fred Turner. When Ray had first met Fred, he was just 23 years old and had been hired to flip burgers in one of their McDonald's stores. But from day one, Ray saw his own energy and enthusiasm for McDonald's reflected in Fred. He was a natural leader with an incredible work ethic, so he quickly climbed the ranks at McDonald's, and within a few years, Ray named him Vice President of Operations. Just like Ray, Fred was very detail-oriented. In his new role, Fred was responsible for maximizing the efficiency of every procedure in the speedy service system. And before long, Fred had basically turned every McDonald's restaurant into a small factory. They took the already successful speedy service system that McDonald brothers had made and made it even better and more efficient. Of course, changing the system went completely against Ray's contract with the McDonald brothers, but at this point he was used to getting ignored by them. The McDonald brothers didn't seem to like how quickly Ray was moving with everything, and so Ray often just pushed on without them. Thanks to Ray's franchising plan of treating franchisees as his partners and not customers, and thanks to Fred's innovations, the franchisees were getting incredibly rich with their stores. Through sheer word of mouth, McDonald's started earning its fame. More and more people were hearing hearing about this exciting business opportunity to own and operate your own McDonald's. And so, instead of Ray having to look for ambitious entrepreneurs to run their stores, they were now coming to him. The Mac family, as Ray called it, was growing, but as McDonald's System Incorporated grew, so did its operating cost, and they still hadn't yet found a better way to make money. The McDonald brothers refused to change anything in the contract, so Ray and Harry were barely hanging on their 1.4% service fee. Ray understood you could only get loyalty from your team if you gave it first, so he sacrificed his salary to be able to afford paying his growing numbers of employees. For his first 8 years, Ray didn't collect a single penny. The only reason he could support his wife and daughter was because by 1959, his old sales company was still running. Ray was working 80 hours per week with unrevealed passion at an age where most people were thinking about retirement. But he still had two problems to solve. Firstly, his company needed to find a new way to make money, or they could never grow a sustainable scale. And secondly, they were the McDonald brothers. Ray felt they were a huge pain to deal with, and he was resented that he was doing all of this work but seeing a very little reward himself. But ultimately, the McDonald's brand still technically belonged to them. Of course, Ray was keen to change that, and in doing so, it would bring out the very worst of Ray Kroc. Don't forget to give me a quick little follow for more trivia and stories on the big brands that you know and love.